When I was very young, around 9 years old, my mother had her first of many nervous breakdowns. That's what they called it back then, when someone simply lost their mind and couldn't cope with reality. In my mother's case, she was diagnosed with many different mental illnesses, from manic depression to schizophrenia to paranoia to schizoid affective to borderline personality disorder. She was in and out of mental institutions my entire life from that point forward. But it wasn't until I was in 7th grade that any of my friends knew anything about it, even my closest friend. And it wasn't because I told them either. I hid the truth from everyone, and in retrospect, I suffered greatly because of it. My closest friends found out because one day when I was walking home from school with them, we saw that several police cars and an ambulance with lights blaring were parked in front of my house. As I ran to the driveway, I saw them taking my mother out of the house in a straitjacket, screaming obscenities to everyone in sight at the top of her lungs, out to an ambulance, with our entire neighborhood standing witness along the curb. As the ambulance and the police cars drove away, I remember standing there with everyone watching me, not saying anything, and I turned to my friends and I said, well, things have been really tough with Mom lately. And I started to cry. Everyone hugged me and supported me, and I realized that I had carried an enormous burden all by myself, not just because of embarrassment, but also because I didn't think anyone else would understand. I learned then, and I continue to learn to this day, how wrong I was. Many, many families suffer in silence from the ravages of mental illness. Last September, our family lost our 16-year-old nephew, Matthew, to suicide. And I know I don't have to tell anyone in this room the struggle we continue to go through. What I also know is that as a family, we've decided to talk about it. Because just like when I was in 7th grade, I learned that keeping these things secret is not only unhealthy, it doesn't help anyone learn from your experience. As a CEO, I've had a public platform, and I've opened up the conversation to our employees and many executives in the community, where the response was not only met with overwhelming support, but also filled with so many personal stories of similar tragedies in their lives. Many communicated that they were currently coping with mental health issues within their families and sometimes even themselves. Imagine telling your CEO that you suffer from depression. It was truly extraordinary, and it continues to be. Many also told me that how my willingness to open up about such a painful life experience gave them courage. I had several people tell me that they were going to seek help because they now realized it was nothing to be ashamed of. I know that just by speaking out, it had a very powerful impact among our 3,500 employees and their families. And I know I saved some lives. I truly believed that by shining a light on something as painful as suicide, that something positive would come out of it. In fact, even in this short time since Matthew's death, I know it already has. That's why I support the Carson J. Spencer Foundation's efforts. Outreach is a powerful tool. Communication is a powerful tool. Education, it's a powerful tool in preventing suicide. I've been very impressed with the thoughtful, long-term approach that Sally and her team have taken to combat the destructive force of suicide. The death of a loved one is devastatingly painful. Death from suicide adds a level of complexity and pain that is honestly incomprehensible. But I've learned that it can be prevented with education that most people don't have. We certainly didn't in our family, even though we thought we were in experts' hands. The Carson J. Spencer Foundation is opening the doors of isolation and giving people the tools to help them meet their struggles with solutions and productive options, tools to fight the very hard battle. And part of the battle is the lens that our society looks through at suicide, or doesn't look at it. Nearly 38,000 Americans die by suicide in the United States every year. It is the 11th leading cause of death in the nation, ahead of HIV/AIDS. And it is the second leading cause of death among Colorado teens. Tragically, Colorado is one of the leaders in the country in teen suicide death. Yet as a society, we are not making the investment needed in this area. Male suicides outnumber female suicides by 4 to 1. However, 3 times as many women attempt suicide. As many as 70% of all people who die by suicide may also suffer from an affective illness such as depression or bipolar disorder. This is very much about mental illness, and it is a disease. As a society, we need to start treating it like one. Tonight, each one of you is making that investment to help the Carson J. Spencer Foundation move faster to save lives. There is a great quote I would like all of you to consider. It's by author Dan Wakefield. Be kind to everyone you meet, because everyone you meet is carrying a great burden or fighting a fierce battle. Everyone is. I am. All of you are. I think that if we all remember this and we act with more understanding and compassion toward each other, imagine what an impact we can make to prevent suicide in our communities and in our country.